These days, we often want results almost immediately. So when a Japanese swordsmith told me he hoped his work might be appreciated 200 years from now, those words stayed with me. In this video, I want to look beyond the technical side of how Japanese swords are made. I visit a swordsmith and a sword polisher in Japan to explore where the beauty of these swords come from and what their work might teach us about beauty, time, and how we live. Hi, I'm Satomi Takayama, a Japanese artist based between Japan and London. Through my videos and writing, I explore Japanese aesthetics, craftsmanship, and the deeper stories behind the quiet wisdom of everyday life. The first person I visited was Ishida-san, a swordsmith who has been forging swords for over 30 years. I drove all the way out to Gunma Prefecture to meet him. Sword making requires government certification, and I was told that across the whole of Japan, fewer than 80 people do this as their main profession. Inside a dimly lit forge, the fire burned a deep purple red. On the wall, a guardian deity was enshrined, and the moment I stepped inside, I felt something almost sacred in the air. Right in front of that intense heat, Ishida-san worked in a quiet concentration, heating the steel, hammering it, back into the fire, hammering again. There was something about his single-minded presence that moved me. But what struck me first in our conversation wasn't about technique. It was something more fundamental. What actually is a Japanese sword? I want to call it by its Japanese name from here, nihon-to. I had always assumed it simply meant a sword made in Japan. But Ishida-san's answer was quite different.
って何って言われたら、日本で作ってるから日本刀なのかっていうとそうじゃないんですよね。多分機能性と精神性と美術性、全部があって日本刀じゃないかっていう。だからワン刀であって材料玉鋼とか、和鉄を用いること以外の条件としてやっぱりよく切れることと神様とかと一緒の扱いを受けること多いですよね。神社のご神体になってたりとか。つまり精神と結びつきがないものは日本刀じゃないんじゃないかって思うんですよ。でさらに美しくないと刀じゃないです。サビサビだったりしてたら錆びて転がってたら怖くないですよね。その辺もあってその3つは大前提じゃないかなと。歴史を内包するものっていうところが入ると日本刀として一番しっかりした状態になっていくんだと思います。西洋の刀剣は外装をきらびやかにして人から見えるところがよりきらびやかにするのに、さらに宝石とか、使うところは道具として見ているので、そこに重きを置いてるのは日本刀の方なんで、日本刀は使う道具なのにめっちゃ細かくまでいわば指紋で傷がつくようなとこまで細かく研いで、鉄の雰囲気と刃の雰囲気を見るっていうのは
Hearing this, I feel like I finally understood why I had never quite known how to look at Japanese swords in museums. I had always been trying to see only the shape, or only the beauty of the blade. But a nihon-to is a cutting tool, a work of art, something sacred, and something that carries centuries of history within it, all at once. In Japan, swords have long been deeply connected with mythology and ritual. So looking at the nihon-to is not simply about asking whether it is beautiful. It also means trying to see the time and the spirit that live within it. As I watched Ishida-san work, I started to find it impossible to see nihon-to as just a tool or just as an art object. Let me briefly explain how a nihon-to is made. A nihon-to is made mainly from a special steel called tamahagane. The swordsmith selects and combines pieces with different qualities, then heats, hammers, folds, and works them again and again until strength and flexibility begin to emerge. Later, clay is applied and the blade is heated, then rapidly cooled in water. That is what creates the sharp edge and the distinctive graceful curve of a nihon-to. At first glance, a swordsmith's work looks very physical, very forceful. But the more I listened, the more I understood that beneath that force was an extraordinarily fine sensitivity. One of the things that fascinated me most was what Ishida-san described as the heating process. Getting the steel to precisely the right state within the fire. If the heat is insufficient, the layers will not bond. If it's too hot, the steel melts. Reading that precise point in between is what makes it so difficult. Ishida-san seems to be drawing on everything at once. The color of the steel, the sparks, the sound, and probably a kind of knowing that goes beyond words. There's an old saying among swordsmiths: 3 years to learn charcoal cutting, 5 years to master the sledgehammer, and a lifetime to master the fire. When Ishida-san said a lifetime, it did not feel exaggerated. Near the end of our time together, Ishida-san showed me how to look at the hamon, the wave-like pattern that appears along the blade's edge. The hamon is one of the most important things to appreciate when viewing a nihon-to. It is shaped by the forging, the clay, the heat of the fire, and the water used to cool the blade. So it is not something that can be completely controlled, but it's not pure chance either. And this is where Ishida-san said something I found really striking.
作為的すぎるのは面白くないんです。見てて飽きるんで。でも
自然な
完全に無作為っていうのは作風が自分の意思が入らないので、それは面白くないんですよ。だから無作為を作為的に作りたいんです。
難しいですね。
だから破綻が
Creating randomness deliberately. On the surface, it sounds like a contradiction, but I felt something deeply Japanese in that idea. It looks natural, but there is an intention behind it. And yet, if that intention becomes too visible, something feels off. I think Japanese gardens work in a similar way. Ceramics too. Not trying to control everything, but making something together with the material, with nature, with chance. The hamon holds the same kind of beauty. Partway through the visit, I was honored to be joined by Ishida-san, whose family runs what is said to be the oldest sword dealership in Japan. He spoke about how, within a single sword, there is something like a narrative arc, a rhythm contained within a single blade.
だから機械で描いたら全部一緒に描くんじゃなくて、あえてゆっくり始まって華やかに乱れていってまた物持ちあたりでぐーっとおとなしくなって綺麗に描えるっていうふうに終わるこのリズムがこの刀の中にあるわけね。オーケストラだってそうでしょ、ずっと最初から最後までダーッと大きなもんじゃなくてさ、静かな導入があって華やかな展開部があって最後終局に向かうみたいな、こうそういうのが意図してこれ全部やってるから、たまたま炎にジョワンって言ったらこうなりましたじゃなくて、石田さんの解釈なので。
Just knowing how to look changes everything about the way you see the same sword. And of all the things Ishida-san said, this is what stayed with me the most.
江戸時代の誰が思ってた刀。
ああ、なるほどね。ってなった時に石田さんが作られる作品っていうのはじゃあもう本当にすごい後に評価される
といいなとは思ってます。
ていうことを待つみたいな感じなんですか。
だから僕が死んで100年200年後にあいつを作ったのはなかなかいいじゃないかって言われたらいいなっていう。
そういう精神で作ってるんですか。
100年後200年後にあいつのなんか下手くそやなって言われたくないからしっかりやるっていう感じです。
These days, we can make things so quickly. And when we make something, we want to know the reaction, the response, the numbers, almost immediately. But to work with a sense of time so completely different from that, hoping to be recognized long after you are gone, felt like it existed in a completely different dimension from the world we live in now. A sword made today is rarely displayed alongside ancient masterpieces in a museum, because it has not yet contained history within it. The evaluation belongs to people in the future. For now, you simply make. That simplicity stayed with me. But even after the sword leaves the swordsmith's hand, its beauty is not yet fully visible. One of the most important parts comes next, polishing. And this is where I realized something I had completely misunderstood. Polishing a nihon-to is not simply about making it sharp or shiny. The next person I visited was Fujishiro-san in Tokyo, the grandson of a living national treasure in the art of sword polishing, and now carrying on that family tradition himself. He oversees the restoration and the conservation of national treasures and important cultural properties across Japan. Before meeting him, I had always thought of polishing as something practical, but what I found was nothing so simple. There was a reason nihon-to carries such extraordinary depth.
包丁を研ぐときと
包丁を研ぐのは、切れるようにするっていう目的か、日本刀のこの私たちがやっているこの美術刀剣研磨だと、切れるようにっていうその工程の先のなんていうんですかね、綺麗に見せるっていう研磨、模様を綺麗に見せるっていう研磨なんで、その辺が違う。
Not only to make it cut, but to make its beauty visible. The polisher's work is to draw out what is already there. The hamon, the surface of the steel, the texture of the metal, using wet stones. And the thing Fujishiro-san said that stayed with me the most was this.
綺麗に見せ方、お化粧に似てると思うんですけど、上手なお化粧
できる人と
初めてお化粧をやった人はそれは違いますよね。
違いますよね。
それのもうずっと半分の半分の半分ってどんどん近づけるけど遠い。
Every sword has a face, a character. Not imposing your own style, but drawing out the expression that sword naturally holds. That, he said, is what good polishing is. The sense of aligning yourself with the materials, not making yourself the main character, but devoting yourself to bringing out what the other holds. When I heard this, it felt so deeply Japanese to me. Beauty is not only about adding things to make something stand out. I feel this sensibility runs through many traditional Japanese forms, not only swords. Fujishiro-san's workspace was quiet, very different from Ishida-san's forge. Just the sound of water dripping, and the soft sound of the blade against the wet stone. If Ishida-san's world was motion, Fujishiro-san's was stillness. Starting from coarser stones, gradually moving to finer ones, a single sword can take more than a month. Polishing requires a very particular way of sitting, and the way you distribute weight through the body matters enormously. When I tried, just getting the sitting position right was enough of a challenge. I realized how much the whole body is involved in keeping the balance. You can probably tell just by watching me how difficult it was. Fujishiro-san spoke of wanting to polish in a way that conveys as much of a sword's inherent beauty as possible. He adjusts which stone to use according to the expression of each sword. What is beautiful cannot be fully put into words, so you refine it little by little through the doing, and it never reaches an end. That echoed what Ishida-san had said about the heating, a lifetime of learning. There's one more thing that moved me near the end. In most cases, a polisher's name is not recorded on the sword itself. What is inscribed is the swordsmith's signature, the maker's name. But Ishida-san said this: half of how the finished sword looks, that is in the polisher's hands, the one who made it, and the one who drew it out. Both are needed before a sword can truly show its face. And it does not stop there. That blade then passes through the hands of many specialists: the scabbard maker, the metalwork artist, the lacquer artist, the handle wrapper, the braid maker, and others, each adding their part before a nihon-to is complete. The beauty of a nihon-to is not completed by a single name. After meeting both of them, what I felt most strongly was the beauty on nihon-to is far more delicate and far more sensory than I had ever imagined. If beauty could be defined purely by symmetry or geometric form, it might be easier to describe objectively. But in Japanese aesthetics, beauty often lives in something less fixed, in natural curves, small irregularities, and subtle nuances that are hard to put into words. That is precisely why cultivating that kind of sensitivity takes time. A lifetime even, and still not finished. There's something deeply admirable about that. Whenever I meet people working in traditional crafts, they remind me of the quiet dignity that comes from accumulating time. That spirit is something I find myself drawn to again and again. In the world we live in now, we want results immediately, but both of them seem to exist in a completely different sense of time, a stillness, a grandness. Not rushing to find answers, but simply continuing to face what is in front of you. Not imposing yourself, but trying to see the expression that something already holds. Watching both of them work, I came to feel that the beauty of nihon-to lives not only in the blade itself, but in that very way of being. Now, when I stand in front of a nihon-to in a museum, I feel I know how to begin looking at it. Not only because I know more facts now, but because I have a door to walk through. I think that is what developing a sense of beauty is. It is not something reserved only for people with special sensitivity. When the way you look at something shifts, even slightly, something you used to walk past can suddenly come into view. I will keep exploring Japanese aesthetics, craftsmanship, and these quieter ways of seeing, and sharing what I found here and in my newsletter. At the heart of this, I'm interested in how we can stay grounded in a world that moves so quickly, and how we can recover our senses, our attention, and a quieter way of being. For me, Japanese ways of thinking, aesthetics, craftsmanship, and spaces are doorways into that question. I'm slowly shaping these ideas into essays, reflections, and future projects including experiences and spaces. So if this way of seeing the world resonates with you, I would be very happy if you subscribe to this channel. It genuinely means a lot to me and helps me keep making videos like this. And if you'd like to go a little deeper, you can also join my Quiet Japan newsletter. That is where I share deeper thoughts, stories I could not fit into the videos, and any new projects as they take shape. And if this video made you curious about nihon-to, I've also linked the website of Ishida-san's sword dealership in the description below. See you in the next one.